The lights on the bridge of the Eternal Harmony flickered once, then twice before going completely dark. Captain Ji-ho Kim looked up from his report, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. In the sudden darkness, only the emergency red lights remained, casting long shadows across the massive command center. "What was that?" Admiral Vextari asked. The tall, crystal-like alien's voice rang like wind chimes in the silence. Her transparent body caught the red light and scattered it into rainbow patterns across the walls. Chief Engineer Morden's insect-like head turned toward his control panel. His 6 arms moved quickly over the biomechanical controls that pulsed with a sickly green light. "Main power grid shows irregular patterns," he clicked in his translated voice. "This should not be possible." Ji-ho set down his coffee and walked to the human station near the back of the bridge. As the human liaison officer, he usually spent his time translating between different alien species and filing reports. Now he watched his simple computer screen show red warning symbols appearing one after another. "Sir," he called to Admiral Vextari, "the human systems are detecting multiple cascade failures throughout the ship." The Admiral's crystalline features shifted, creating new facets that caught the emergency lighting. "Explain cascade failures in simple terms." "When one thing breaks, it makes other things break, which makes even more things break," Ji-ho said, like dominoes falling down. Before anyone could respond, the ship shuddered. Not the gentle vibration of normal space travel, but a deep, grinding shake that seemed to come from the very bones of the massive vessel. The Eternal Harmony was the largest ship in the Galactic Defense Fleet, home to 50,000 beings from 12 different species. It was supposed to be impossible to break. Engineer Hana Park's voice crackled over the communication system from deep in the ship's engine sections. "Bridge, this is engineering. We have serious problems down here." "Report," Admiral Vextari commanded. "The crystalline energy matrices are cracking." Hana's voice was tight with worry. "The insectoid biomechanical components are rejecting their connections to the Vorthak gravity systems. Everything is fighting against everything else." Morden's compound eyes reflected the red emergency lights as he studied his readings. "This cannot occur. Each system was designed to work with the others. We tested them for 5 cycles before installation." "Well, they're not working now," Ji-ho muttered, watching more warning symbols appear on his screen. The ship shuddered again, this time accompanied by a sound like breaking glass that echoed through the walls. In the distance, they could hear the hum of the life support system starting to stutter. "How long do we have?" Admiral Vextari asked. Morden's 6 arms danced over his controls, pulling up holographic displays that showed the ship's vital systems. "If the pattern continues, complete life support failure in 48 hours. Gravity systems will fail in 30 hours. Food production will stop in 20 hours. The Admiral's crystal body darkened, a sign of deep thought among her species. "Send word to all department heads. Emergency repair protocols are now in effect." Ji-ho watched the organized chaos begin around him, the bridge filled with beings from different species, all trying to understand what was happening to their ship. The Vorthak engineers, who looked like walking rocks, stomped in to discuss gravity control. The ethereal beings, barely visible wisps of energy, flickered around the communication stations. The reptilian security chiefs hissed orders to their subordinates. But as Ji-ho listened to the discussions, he noticed something strange. Each species was talking about fixing their own systems. The crystalline engineers wanted to retune their energy matrices. The insectoids talked about regrowing damaged biocomponents. The Vorthak focused on their gravity manipulators. "Has anyone considered that maybe the systems are fighting each other?" Ji-ho asked during a brief pause in the technical discussions. The bridge went quiet. Admiral Vextari turned her rainbow-scattered attention to him. "What do you mean?" "Well," Ji-ho said, feeling suddenly self-conscious as every alien eye, sensor, and energy field focused on him. "You have 12 different technologies all trying to work together. What if something changed that made them incompatible?" Morden's mandibles clicked together, which Ji-ho had learned was either thinking or disagreement. "Impossible. The technologies were integrated using proven mathematical models. If they worked before, they must work now." "But they're not working now," Ji-ho pointed out. Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered again. This time they stayed off longer. When they came back on, they were dimmer than before. The ship's humming, which had been as constant as breathing for the past 3 years, began to sound uneven. "Bridge, this is Engineer Park." Hana's voice came through the speakers, now with static. "We've lost power to sections 7 through 12. The biomechanical components in the engine room are starting to... well, they're dying." "Dying?" "Admiral." Vextari's voice climbed higher, creating musical notes. "The insectoid biotech needs specific energy frequencies to survive," Hana explained. "But the crystalline matrices are putting out different frequencies now because they're cracked. It's like trying to feed a plant with the wrong kind of light." Jiho leaned forward. "So the crystalline tech breaks, which hurts the insectoid tech, which probably affects something else, which affects something else. A cascade failure," Admiral Vexitari said slowly. "Your dominoes falling down." "Exactly." The ship shuddered once more, and this time the lights stayed dim when they came back on. Through the large windows of the bridge, Jiho could see other lights going out throughout the massive vessel. Whole sections were going dark. "All department heads to emergency stations," Admiral Vexitari announced over the ship-wide communication system. "Begin immediate repair procedures according to your species protocols." As aliens hurried off the bridge to deal with the crisis, Jiho remained at his station, watching the cascade of failures continue to spread through the ship's systems. He pulled up a simple diagram on his screen showing how all the different technologies connected to each other. It looked like a spider web with each species' technology as a different colored thread. "Hana," he said into his communicator, "I'm looking at the system integration diagram. Do you see it too?" "Yeah, I've got it here." "Pretty complicated, right?" "That's the problem," Jiho said. "It's too complicated. Look at all these connections. When one thing breaks, it's connected to 20 other things. So maybe we need to think about this differently. Instead of trying to fix everything perfectly, maybe we need to work around the broken parts." There was silence on the other end. Then Hana laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Jiho, we're talking about the most advanced technologies in the galaxy. You can't just work around them." "Why not?" Before Hana could answer, another section of the ship went dark. The Eternal Harmony, pride of the Galactic Defense Fleet, was slowly dying, and all around him, the most intelligent beings in known space were trying to fix it using the same methods that had failed for the past 6 hours. Jiho looked at his simple human computer, then at the impossibly complex alien technologies surrounding him. Maybe he thought it was time to try something different, something simpler, something human. But first, they had to survive long enough to try. 6 hours after the first power failure, the Eternal Harmony was in worse shape than before. Jiho walked through the corridors, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Emergency lighting worked in some sections, but many hallways were completely black. The air tasted stale, and he could hear the life support system struggling to keep up. He found Engineer Hana Park in Engineering Section C, surrounded by alien technologies that looked more like art than machines. The crystalline energy matrices rose from the floor like glass trees, their surfaces covered in spiderweb cracks. Some had gone completely dark. The insectoid biomechanical components, which usually pulsed with healthy green light, were turning brown and shrinking. "Any progress?" Jiho asked. Hana wiped sweat from her forehead. "The crystalline engineers have been working for 4 hours trying to repair their matrices. They keep saying the harmonic frequencies are wrong, but they can't figure out why." She pointed to a group of tall, transparent beings gathered around one of the cracked crystal structures. They hummed in unison, creating musical tones that should have healed the crystal. Instead, the cracks seemed to grow larger. "What about the insectoids? They're trying to regrow the damaged biocomponents, but it's not working either." Hana led him to another area where Morden and several other insect-like engineers hovered over what looked like a dying garden. The biomechanical parts that should have been green and growing were turning black and brittle. "The biotechnology requires specific nutrients and energy patterns," Morden explained when he saw them watching, "but the failing crystalline matrices are disrupting the energy we need." We cannot regrow what we cannot feed. Jiho watched a young insectoid engineer carefully inject nutrients into one of the biocomponents. For a moment it seemed to respond, growing slightly greener. Then the crystalline matrix next to it flickered, the energy pattern changed, and the biocomponent died immediately. "See?" Hana said quietly. "Every time one group tries to fix their system, it affects another system. The Vorthak gravity engineers can't work because the insectoid biotech is failing. The insectoids can't work because the crystalline tech is broken. The crystalline tech can't be fixed because the Vorthak gravity fields are unstable. They moved to the next section, where massive stone-like beings worked on gravity control systems. The Vorthak engineers moved slowly and deliberately, adjusting complex controls with their thick rock-like fingers, but every adjustment they made caused vibrations that shook the delicate crystalline matrices in the next room. "Has anyone tried working together?" Jiho asked. Hana shook her head. "They tried that 3 hours ago, but each species has completely different approaches. The crystallines work with harmonic frequencies and mathematical precision. The insectoids use biological adaptation and organic growth. The Vorthak rely on gravitational manipulation and massive force. When they try to combine methods, a loud crash echoed from the next room, followed by the sound of breaking crystal. "That happens," Hana finished. They walked back toward the central engineering area, where Admiral Vexitari was meeting with all the department heads. The alien voices created a strange symphony of clicks, musical tones, electronic sounds, and translated speech. "Report," the Admiral commanded as they approached. Chief Engineer Morden spoke first. "Biomechanical systems are failing at an increasing rate. We have lost 30% of organic components. The remaining components are weakening due to energy disruption." The lead crystalline engineer, Lear Andros, chimed in with musical tones. "Crystal matrices cannot maintain stable harmonic frequencies. Each repair attempt fails because external vibrations disrupt the healing process." Battlemaster Krentok, a massive reptilian being with scales that looked like armor, hissed his report. "Gravity systems unstable. Weapons offline. If we encounter hostile forces, we cannot defend ourselves." "And life support?" Admiral Vexistari asked. 36 hours remaining at current failure rate," Morden answered. "Possibly less if the cascade continues to accelerate." The Admiral's crystalline body went completely dark for a moment, then brightened again. "Continue repair efforts. Increase work teams. Try alternative approaches." As the meeting broke up, Jiho noticed something. Each species' engineers immediately went back to their own sections to work on their own technologies. The crystallines returned to their matrices. The insectoids went back to their biocomponents. The Vorthak resumed work on gravity systems. "They're all working separately again," he said to Hana. "Of course they are," she replied. "That's how they've always done it. Each species specializes in what they're best at. But what if that's the problem?" Hana stopped walking and looked at him. "What do you mean?" Jiho thought about how to explain it. "On Earth, when something complicated breaks, we don't try to fix it perfectly. We try to make it work well enough. To get the job done, we use whatever parts we have available. These aren't Earth machines, Jiho. These are the most advanced technologies in the galaxy." "So? Technology is technology. If the fancy solution doesn't work, you try a simple solution." They reached Technician Sunho Lee's workstation, where the Yaoi young engineer was studying readings from multiple alien systems. His equipment looked primitive compared to the alien technology around it, but it was working when most of the alien systems were failing. "Sunho," Jiho called. "What are your readings? Show?" Sunho looked up from his simple computer screen. "It's weird. The alien systems are rejecting each other, but my human equipment can interface with all of them. It's like I'm speaking a language they can all understand, even if they can't understand each other." "Show me." Sunho pulled up a display that showed energy readings from all the different alien technologies. "See, the crystalline matrices put out these complex harmonic patterns. The insectoid biotech needs steady, simple energy flows. The Vorthak gravity systems create massive power spikes. They're all trying to work together, but they're speaking different languages. What if we could translate between them? Jiho asked. What do you mean? Your human equipment can talk to all of them, right? What if we used human systems as translators to help the alien technologies understand each other? Hana and Sunho looked at each other, then back at Jiho. That's not how advanced engineering works, Hana said slowly. You don't just stick random components together and hope they work. Why not? If the advanced way isn't working, maybe we need to try the random way. Before anyone could respond, the ship shuddered again. The lights went out completely this time, and it took almost a full minute for the emergency power to kick in. When the dim red lights finally came back on, they could hear alarms sounding throughout the ship. Bridge to all personnel. Admiral Vextari's voice came over the speakers. We have lost main power to sections 15 through 23. All non-essential personnel report to emergency stations. Jiho looked around at the failing alien technologies, then at the simple human equipment that was still working. Hana, what's the worst that could happen if we try something different? We could make things worse. How? The ship is already dying. The best engineers in the galaxy have been working for 8 hours and things are getting worse, not better. Hana was quiet for a long moment, listening to the sounds of the dying ship around them. The constant hum of healthy technology had been replaced by irregular stuttering, grinding noises, and the occasional crash of something breaking. What exactly are you suggesting? She asked finally. I'm suggesting we stop trying to fix everything perfectly and start trying to make things work well enough to keep us alive. Using human methods? Using whatever methods work. Sunho looked up from his computer. The failure rate is accelerating. At this pace, we might not have 36 hours. We might have less than 24. Hana stared at the failing alien technologies around them. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had created these marvels of engineering, but now those marvels were dying, and traditional methods weren't saving them. Okay, she said finally. What do you want to try? Admiral Vextari stood in the main engineering bay, her crystalline body dim with worry. Around her, the best engineers in the galaxy continued their careful, methodical repair attempts. But the ship kept getting worse. Another section had just lost power, and the life support estimates had dropped to 18 hours. Admiral, Captain Jiho Kim approached her, with engineers Hana Park and Sunho Lee behind him. We'd like permission to try a different approach. What kind of approach? She asked, her voice creating small musical echoes in the large space. Human engineering methods, Jiho said simply. Chief Engineer Mordun's 6 arms stopped moving over his biomechanical controls. His compound eyes turned toward the humans. Human methods? But your species has the most primitive technology on this ship. Maybe that's exactly what we need right now, Hana said. Simple solutions for a complicated problem. Explain, Admiral Vexitari commanded. Jiho pulled out a tablet showing the ship's system diagram. Every species is trying to restore their technology to perfect working condition. But what if perfect isn't possible right now? What if we just need good enough? Good enough? Leandros, the lead crystalline engineer, chimed with confused tones. Systems either function correctly or they do not. There is no good enough. Sure there is, Sunho said, stepping forward. On Earth, we fix things with whatever we have available. If the proper part isn't available, we make something else work. If the right tool is broken, we use a different tool. Mechanic Dongyun Jang arrived just in time to hear this. He was covered in grease and carrying a toolbox that looked ancient compared to the alien equipment around them. What's this about making things work? We want to try jury-rigging some solutions, Hana explained. Dongyun grinned. Now you're talking my language. What needs fixing? Morden gestured with all 6 arms at the failing systems around them. Everything. The crystalline matrices are cracked and cannot maintain proper harmonic frequencies. The biomechanical components are dying due to energy disruption. The gravity systems are destabilizing everything else. So they're all fighting each other, Donghyun said, studying the alien technologies. Simple problem. We just need to make them stop fighting. It is not simple, Leandros protested, his crystalline form flashing with frustrated colors. These systems require precise calibration and perfect energy patterns. Or, Dongyun said, opening his toolbox, they need to be isolated from each other so they can't interfere. He pulled out what looked like ordinary metal sheeting and some basic tools. This is shielding material. Nothing fancy, just basic electromagnetic isolation. What if we put barriers between the systems that are fighting? The alien engineers looked confused. That would disrupt the integrated design, Mordoon pointed out. The integrated design is already disrupted, Hana said. It's destroying itself. Admiral Vexitari watched as Dongyun began measuring the space between a crystalline matrix and an insectoid biocomponent cluster. You wish to separate the technologies? Just the ones that are hurting each other, Jiho explained. We keep what works and isolate what doesn't work together. But that will require new connections, new interfaces, Leandros protested. The mathematical precision required will be good enough instead of perfect, Sunho interrupted. He was already setting up his human computer equipment. Look, I can create interface programs that translate between your different systems. They won't be elegant, but they'll work. Dr. Mina Choi arrived with more human equipment. I heard we're trying adaptive solutions. What do you need? We need to create buffer zones and translation layers, Hana explained quickly. The alien systems are too specialized to work together during a crisis, so we need to give them space and help them communicate. Like relationship counseling for machines, Mina said with a slight smile. I like it. The alien engineers watched with growing confusion as the humans began working. Instead of the careful, methodical approaches they were used to, the humans moved quickly and decisively. Donghyun cut metal sheeting with simple tools and began installing electromagnetic barriers between conflicting systems. Sunho ran cables from his computer to multiple alien interfaces, creating new communication pathways. This is chaos, Mordoon clicked in distress. You cannot simply connect incompatible technologies with primitive cables. Watch us, Hana said, helping Sunho route power through a human control system to regulate the energy flowing to the insectoid. Biocomponents. The first success was small but dramatic. One cluster of biomechanical components isolated from the chaotic energy patterns of the cracked crystalline matrices began to stabilize. The brown, dying appearance slowly shifted back toward healthy green. It is working? Mordoon's voice carried surprise and hope. It's working well enough, Sunho confirmed, monitoring the energy levels on his simple equipment. The biotech isn't getting perfect energy, but it's getting consistent energy. That's what it needs to survive. Encouraged, the humans expanded their efforts. Unisong arrived with more computer equipment and began creating translation programs between different alien systems. Welder Kyungmin Ro started building physical support structures to reinforce areas where the ship's failing systems had created structural stress. You are creating an entirely different system architecture, Leandros observed, his crystalline form shifting through various colors as he processed what he was seeing. Exactly, Jiho said. Instead of trying to make a broken system work perfectly, we're making a new system that works with the broken parts. But this violates fundamental engineering principles, protested Battlemaster Krentok, who had arrived to check on weapon system repairs. So does a dead ship, Donghyun pointed out, installing another isolation barrier. Sometimes you have to break the rules to solve the problem. The humans worked through the next 4 hours with an energy and creativity that amazed the alien observers. They used spare parts from food processors to create bypass circuits. They stripped metal plating from non-essential areas to create new support structures. They connected systems that were never designed to work together, using human technology as the bridge between them. More importantly, they began teaching willing aliens their unconventional methods. Young insectoid engineer Tikpak started experimenting with partial biocomponent regrowth instead of waiting for perfect conditions. A junior crystalline engineer named Sil Andra began accepting harmonic frequencies that were close enough, rather than mathematically perfect. The energy output is only 92% of optimal, Silandra chimed to Leandros. That is insufficient, Leandros replied automatically. But it's stable, Sunho pointed out, checking his readings. 92% that stays steady is better than 100% that keeps failing. The breakthrough came when Hana realized they didn't need to restore the ship's original integrated design. "We're thinking about this wrong," she announced, to the mixed group of human and alien engineers. "We don't need to fix the old system. We need to build a new system that accepts the damage and works around it." "Explain this concept," Admiral Vexitari requested. She had been watching the human efforts with growing interest. "Think of it like a river that's been dammed," Hana said. "You can't always remove the dam. Sometimes you have to dig new channels around it." "Multiple redundant pathways," Mina added. "If one connection fails, there are backup connections ready to take over." "Fault tolerance," Jiho said. "The system keeps working even when parts of it break." The alien engineers looked at each other, with expressions of dawning understanding. They had been trying to restore perfect integration. The humans were creating imperfect but resilient integration. "This is possible?" Morden asked. "It's already working," Kyungmin said, gesturing to the biomechanical components that were now growing steadily under the protection of electromagnetic shielding and human-regulated power supplies. For the first time since the crisis began, the ship's condition began to improve instead of getting worse. The immediate danger of life support failure receded, but they still had a lot of work to do, and the real test would be whether their jury-rigged solutions could hold together long enough to get the ship to port. 3 days after the humans began their unconventional repairs, the Eternal Harmony was running again. Not smoothly, not perfectly, but it was running. The corridors hummed with the sound of jury-rigged systems and improvised solutions. Cables ran along walls where they had never been designed to go. Metal patches covered hull sections that had been stripped for parts. Strange hybrid interfaces connected alien technologies that should have been incompatible. Engineer Taiyang Quan, the Yao, newest human crew member, stood in Engineering Section C staring at a combination of crystalline energy matrix, human computer equipment, and insectoid biomechanical components, all working together through a system of cables, isolation barriers, and translation programs. That looked like it had been built by someone who had never seen a proper engineering manual. "It's beautiful," he said in wonder. "It's a mess," replied Senior Chief Soranam, but she was smiling as she said it. "A beautiful, functional mess." The transformation had been remarkable to watch. What started as desperate improvisation had evolved into something approaching art. The humans had not just fixed the ship's systems, they had reimagined them entirely. Yuna Song had created a masterpiece of adaptive programming. Her translation software didn't just connect different alien systems, it learned how they wanted to communicate and adapted in real time. When the crystalline matrices shifted their harmonic frequencies, her programs automatically adjusted the signals going to the insectoid biocomponents. When the Vorthak gravity systems fluctuated, her software compensated by regulating power flow to other systems. "It's like teaching different languages to speak to each other," she explained to fascinated alien engineers. "The crystalline matrices speak in mathematical harmonies. The biocomponents speak in chemical signals. The gravity systems speak in force equations. My programs translate between all of them. But translation implies loss of information," Leorandros pointed out. "Perfect communication requires direct connection." "Perfect communication broke," Yuna replied simply. "Good enough communication works." The aliens were beginning to understand this human concept of good enough. Junior crystalline engineer Sil Andra had become an expert at creating harmonic frequencies that were close to mathematical perfection, but stable enough to maintain over time. Instead of the precisely calculated 99.7% harmonic that would fail after a few hours, she created the 92% harmonic that would run for days. "My teachers would be horrified," she chimed to Hana during one of their joint repair sessions. "We are taught that imprecision leads to system failure." "Sometimes precision leads to system failure too," Hana replied, adjusting a human-built interface that was smoothly regulating power between Silandra's crystals and Tikpok's biocomponents. The trick is knowing when to be precise and when to be practical. Young insectoid engineer Tikpok had made even more dramatic changes to his approach. Instead of trying to regrow biomechanical components to their original specifications, he had learned to grow hybrid components that could accept imperfect energy inputs and still function. His new biotech looked different from the original designs, but it was hardier and more adaptable. The old components required perfect conditions, he clicked to Morden. These new components can survive in imperfect conditions and still do their job. But they are not optimized for maximum efficiency, Morden protested. They are optimized for reliability, Tikpok replied. Sometimes reliability is more important than efficiency. The humans had also discovered something unexpected about alien technology. It responded well to what they called percussive maintenance. When a stubborn crystalline matrix refused to accept new harmonic frequencies, sometimes a gentle tap in the right place would realign its internal structure. When biomechanical components became sluggish, a small vibration often stimulated them back to full activity. Donghyun Jang had become famous throughout the ship for his ability to fix alien technology by hitting it with just the right amount of force in exactly the right place. The aliens were amazed that this primitive technique actually worked. The mathematics of percussive maintenance are incredibly complex, Leandros admitted after watching Donghyun coax a failing matrix back to life with 3 precise taps from a simple metal tool. How do you calculate the exact force and location required? I don't calculate it, Donghyun said. I feel it. The crystal tells me where it wants to be touched. That is impossible. Crystals do not communicate through intuition. Maybe not with you. Donghyun grinned. But they talk to me just fine. The biggest breakthrough came when Hana realized they could create entirely new hybrid systems that combined the best features of different alien technologies while avoiding their incompatibilities. Instead of trying to force crystalline and insectoid systems to work together directly, they created buffer zones using human technology that allowed each system to operate in its preferred environment while still contributing to the ship's overall function. It's like a universal translator for technologies, she explained to Admiral Vexistari during one of their progress reports. Each species' technology can work the way it's designed to work, but they all contribute to the same goal. Show me, the Admiral requested. Hana led her to a section where Kyungmin Ro had built what looked like a technological ecosystem. Crystalline matrices provided energy to human regulation systems, which processed and distributed that energy to insectoid biocomponents, which performed their biological functions and passed their outputs to Vorthak gravity manipulators, which fed their force calculations back to human computers, which adjusted the whole system's performance in real time. Each technology does what it does best, Hana explained. But instead of forcing them to interface directly, we give them space to work and use human systems to coordinate between them. The efficiency is lower than optimal integration, Admiral Vextari observed. But the reliability is much higher, Senior Chief Nam added. If one component fails, the system adapts around it instead of everything failing together. Multiple backup pathways, Jiho said, joining the group. Fault tolerance, graceful degradation, all human engineering concepts. Human concepts that work with alien technology, Admiral Vextari noted thoughtfully. The most remarkable change was in the attitudes of the alien engineers themselves. Species that had worked separately for generations were now collaborating on hybrid solutions. Crystalline precision was being combined with insectoid adaptability and Vorthak stability, all coordinated through human flexibility. We are creating something new, Morden observed to his mixed team of human and alien engineers. Not crystalline technology, not insectoid technology, not human technology, something that combines all approaches. Hybrid engineering, Mina Choi suggested, taking the best from everyone and making it work together. But it violates so many established principles, young engineer Taeyang protested. He was still struggling to accept how chaotic the solutions looked compared to proper engineering. Textbooks. Sometimes you have to violate established principles to solve unprecedented problems, Soranam said gently. The ship was dying. Perfect engineering couldn't save it. Imperfect engineering did. Good enough engineering, Yuna corrected with a smile. As the fourth day of repairs concluded, the Eternal Harmony was not just surviving but actually performing better in some ways than it had before the crisis. The new hybrid systems were more resilient, more adaptable, and more robust than the original integrated design. But the real test was still coming. They were approaching the outer edges of known space, where they would encounter other ships and potentially hostile forces. Their jury-rigged flagship would need to prove that it could function not just in controlled repair conditions, but in the unpredictable environment of real space operations. 2 weeks after the crisis began, the Eternal Harmony limped into the main fleet port at Kepler Station. But limped wasn't quite the right word anymore. The ship moved with a different kind of confidence, its hybrid systems humming with steady reliability. The hull bore visible scars where metal plating had been moved from one section to another. Cables ran along exterior surfaces where they had never been designed to go. To anyone who knew what the ship used to look like, it was obviously different. Admiral Hyunwoo Shin waited at the docking port as the massive vessel settled into its berth. As the senior human admiral in the Galactic Defense Fleet, he had come personally to investigate reports of the flagship's experimental repairs. Behind him stood Ambassador Jiwon An and a team of engineering specialists from multiple species, all eager to understand what had happened. Permission to come aboard, Admiral Shin requested formally as the airlock connected. Permission granted, Admiral Vexitari replied, her crystalline form sparkling with what appeared to be pride. Welcome to the new Eternal Harmony. The inspection tour was unlike anything the visiting engineers had expected. Instead of the pristine, perfectly integrated systems they remembered, they found a fascinating mixture of advanced alien technology and human improvisation working together in ways that seemed impossible. This is where it started. Captain Jiho, Kim explained, leading the group through Engineering Section C. The crystalline matrices cracked, the biomechanical components began dying, and everything started fighting against everything else. And your solution was to separate them? Asked Dr. Veltaran, a senior crystalline engineer from the inspection team. Our solution was to give them space to work without hurting each other, Hana Park corrected. Look, she gestured to a section where crystalline energy matrices operated behind electromagnetic shielding, providing perfectly stable energy to human regulation systems, which then distributed that energy to insectoid biocomponents that had been modified to accept imperfect power inputs. The crystalline tech works like it's supposed to work, Sunho Lee explained. The biotech works like it's supposed to work, but instead of making them talk directly to each other, we use human systems as translators and regulators. Senior engineer Kolomek from the Vorthak delegation studied the gravity control systems with obvious confusion. These are not standard configurations. The gravitational field generators are operating at suboptimal parameters. 91% efficiency, Kyungmin Ro confirmed cheerfully. But they've been running steady for 12 days without a single failure. On the original system, we could achieve 98% efficiency, Kolmek pointed out. For about 4 hours at a time before something broke, Dong Yunjang added. Then we'd spend 8 hours fixing it, get another 4 hours of 98% and break again. This gives us 91% continuously. Better to have 91% that works than 98% that doesn't, Admiral Shin observed. Show me the overall system integration. Yuna Song led them to the central control room where her adaptive programming managed the ship's hybrid systems. Screens showed energy flows, communication pathways, and system status updates from dozens of different technologies all working together through her translation software. The program learns how each system wants to communicate, she explained. When the crystalline matrices change their output frequencies, the software automatically adjusts the inputs to all connected systems. When biocomponents go through their natural growth cycles, the program compensates by routing power through alternative pathways. It adapts in real time, Dr. Veltaran said with obvious amazement. Our most advanced systems require manual recalibration when conditions change. Manual recalibration assumes someone notices the change and has time to fix it, Mina Choi pointed out. Automatic adaptation means the system fixes itself before problems become critical. Ambassador Jiwon An had been quiet during most of the tour, but now she spoke up. Admiral Vex Tari, what's your assessment of the ship's current capabilities compared to its original specifications? The crystalline admiral's form shifted through several colors before she responded. Individual system performance is lower than original specifications. Overall, ship reliability is significantly higher. We have experienced 0 system failures since the human modifications were completed. And in combat situations, we encountered a pirate raid 3 days ago, Battlemaster Krentok reported. Weapon systems performed adequately. More importantly, we took damage to hull sections 7 and 9. The hybrid systems automatically rerouted around the damaged areas. We maintained full combat capability throughout the engagement. The old system would have required us to withdraw from combat to make repairs, Admiral Vexitari added. The new system adapted and continued fighting. Admiral Shin nodded slowly. And what about maintenance requirements? Senior Chief Sora Nam stepped forward. Maintenance is simpler but more frequent. Instead of complex repairs that take days to complete, we do simple adjustments that take minutes. Instead of waiting for complete system failures, we fix small problems before they become big problems. Preventive maintenance instead of crisis response, Taiyang Quan added. He had become much more comfortable with the hybrid approach over the past weeks. The philosophical implications are fascinating, Dr. Veltaran chimed thoughtfully. We have always pursued technological perfection. You have achieved technological resilience. Sometimes resilience is more valuable than perfection, Jiho said. The inspection continued for several more hours as the visiting engineers examined every aspect of the human modifications. They tested systems, reviewed performance data, and interviewed both human and alien crew members about their experiences with the hybrid technology. Finally, Admiral Shin called for a private meeting with the senior staff. I've seen enough, he announced. These modifications represent a fundamental shift in how we approach engineering problems. The question is, do we implement these approaches fleet-wide? The performance improvements are undeniable, Admiral Vextari stated. Our reliability has increased by orders of magnitude. But it requires a different mindset, Mordun pointed out. Engineering for adequacy instead of optimization, accepting imperfection as a design feature, embracing hybrid solutions instead of pure technological approaches, Lerandros added. My species has spent millennia perfecting crystal-based energy systems. These modifications suggest that perfection might not be the goal. What is the goal? Ambassador An asked. Keeping people alive, Hana said simply. Making sure the ship works when you need it to work. Being ready for problems you didn't expect. Human engineering philosophy, Admiral Shin mused. Practical solutions for real-world problems. 3 months later, the Galactic Defense Fleet issued new engineering protocols. Every major vessel would carry human integration teams trained in adaptive repair methodologies. New ship designs would incorporate hybrid architectures that combined multiple species technologies through human coordination systems. The Fleet Engineering Academy added mandatory courses in fault-tolerant design and graceful degradation principles. Captain Jiho Kim was promoted to Chief of Hybrid Engineering for the entire fleet. Engineer Hana Park became the head of the new Department of Adaptive Systems. The Eternal Harmony became a mobile training platform, traveling throughout the galaxy to demonstrate hybrid engineering techniques to other ships and stations. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. The Galactic Defense Fleet had learned that sometimes the best solution isn't the perfect solution. Sometimes good enough is not just adequate, it's superior. The Eternal Harmony continued its patrol duties, its hull bearing the visible scars of its transformation. Those scars had become badges of honor, symbols of survival and adaptation. Other ships began requesting similar modifications, wanting the reliability and resilience that came with human-inspired hybrid engineering. The ship that had nearly died from the pursuit of perfection had been reborn through the embrace of imperfection. And in that rebirth, it had become something stronger, more adaptable and more alive than its designers had ever imagined possible. The humans had given the galaxy more than just repair techniques. They had given them a new way of thinking about technology, problems, and solutions. Sometimes it turned out the most advanced approach was also the most human approach. Make it work, keep it simple, and always have a backup plan.